Friends, today we are going to talk about caching patterns. Our ultimate aim is to understand cache-aside patterns. But before this, we are going to understand what are the different caching patterns provided by out-of-the-box caching systems. For example, there are some of the caching patterns as for read, there is a read-through cache. What happens in a read-through cache is when you're trying to read your data from a cache, you send a request to the cache server, and then if the data is present in the cache, then that data is returned to you. If the data is not present, then you request your data store, then data store responds to the cache, and then cache stores that data inside it and sends the response to the calling party. So this is the read through cache. Another reading caching pattern is refresh ahead caching. Now this is some new caching technology according to me. I was not aware of it. It is an old caching technology or caching methodology, but I learned it recently. So what happens in this case is caching system keeps an intelligent eye on the keys that are expiring. So it, for example, this key K is expiring in next 90 seconds, then caching system takes an intelligent call whether it wants to refresh this key from the database even when there is no request to the server. For example, if there was no request for the key K, then also it can take a call to refresh the key from the database by asynchronously calling the database. It takes its decision of whether how much time this key has been used and how frequently has it been used, and it can also consider what is the last time it was used. So it is going to refresh according to the least recently used principle, that if this key K was used recently, then it can take a call to asynchronously update its data from the database. So whenever a next call to the key K comes, then it can be served in least latency. Because if it was a read through cache, then it would need to go to the database first, and then you will be getting the response. So your responses would have been slower. But there are downsides to this pattern. For example, if you are not able to handle the algorithm which is deciding what keys to update from the database or data store, then you can send unnecessary traffic from your cache to your data store. So it is going to increase utilization on this data store. It is going to increase unnecessary queries on your data store. Also, it is going to impact performance of your caching store because it is doing background processing, and it may impact the real-time running caching requests that are coming to your database. But if this methodology or technique can be used wisely to determine which keys to update, then it can provide very good performance, because whenever you're trying to read, it is always going to hit the cache. So if you can handle that algorithm to find which keys to update, then it is a very good algorithm. Now let's get back to the write through cache. It is a writing methodology. So for example, if you want to write something in your database, what you can do is, in write through cache, what we do is we send our write request to the caching store, then caching store writes that data to the database, then database returns that response, and then the response is returned to you. So this is called write through cache, because you're writing through cache to your database. So that is write through cache. What is write behind cache? In write behind cache, rather than sending the request, writing through the cache, rather than doing this, what we do is we only save the data in the cache and then return the response like this. So you're only saving the data in the caching system. You're only sending data here. You're not sending it to the database right now. What you're going to do is you are going to asynchronously update the database and take its account that that data has been updated. Now let's see how this is implemented actually in the caching systems, right behind caching systems. So this is right behind cache, because initially you have just sent the response, whatever request was there, you wrote it to the cache and you went away with your request. So your writing time was very less, time to write or latency for your write operation was very less, and then you collectively updated whatever data that you had to your data store. So database can also be optimized. Now let's see how we can how we basically implement right behind cache. Sorry, how we implement right behind cache. So when you are sending the write request to the cache, you're just writing to the cache and returning the response, so latency is less. And when you're writing the request in the cache, it is actually being written in the right behind queue. It is basically a queue. You are sending the response in the queue and all the data is being written in the queue. This helps in maintaining the order in which these operations should be applied in the database. So asynchronously, your cache is going to handle writing these data into the data store. The time after which this data is flushed from your write behind queue to your data store is called write delay or write behind time. So your data store is going to be, for example, let's say you flush your write behind cache after every 5 seconds. So your data store is going to be at max 5 seconds behind your cache. So in the very worst case scenario, if your cache crashes and you're not able to recover the data, then you're going to lose only 5 seconds of data. So these systems are written with these types of scenarios in mind, but still, if there's a possibility, then you're going to lose only write behind time delays of data. So this is called write behind delay, the delay after which your data is written from write behind queue to your data store. So this is write behind cache. So we have seen the four caching methodologies of out of the box caches. For example, read through cache, where we read through this like this. Write through cache, where we write like this. Then there's a write behind cache, in which we write like this, and then asynchronously we are updating the data in the database and taking its response. So and these and another thing is refresh ahead cache, in which the cache is asynchronously querying the database and updating the keys which it thinks can be frequently used or can be used next. So this reduces the latency if the algorithm to find which keys to update is efficient. So now let's move on to the write cache aside pattern. So this is the cache aside pattern. In cache aside pattern, what we do is, instead of using out of the box caching systems, we have our application. We have our application on which requests are coming, and the application is connected to your database, and it is connected also to your cache store. In here, cache store generally means that, for example, there is going to be difference in speeds of access. For example, the speed of accessing data from your database might be 35 milliseconds, and speed of accessing data from your cache store may be 7 milliseconds. So your data is cache is 5 times faster than database. But what is the downside of this? The medium on which cache is storing your data is costly. For example, it may be storing your data in RAM or memory. Then memory is basically costlier than your hard disk, right? Or it can be like memory is costlier than SSD, solid state devices, and SSD is costlier than hard disk. But in terms of performance, memory provides very high performance, then SSD, and then HDD. So all the caching concepts are based around the fact that some medium you try to read data from a faster medium while controlling cost of having a smaller, faster medium. For example, caches are generally small. You're not keeping all your data in cache. You're just if it is larger, you're not keeping all of the data. So considering this, what happens in this scenario is caches your application in the cache aside pattern. Your application on receiving request, it will first send the request to your cache. This is the cache, and then if there is a hit, then it is going to send the response. So this is the cache hit. Yellow is cache hit. And if there is a cache miss, for example, like this, if there is a cache miss, what is going to happen is, since this is a cache miss, it is going to come here, then it is going to query the database, then it is going to come here, and it is going to send the response. Okay, and you are going to asynchronously write that data back in the cache. Okay, so you are basically updating the cache afterward. So this is cache aside pattern, in which it can also be implemented in other ways, but generally we see that you are just retrieving the data from the if there's a cache miss, then you retrieve data from the MS, from the data store, and it is returned. So in this case, your latency is going to be 5 milliseconds. And in the miss scenario, you are first retrieving data you are checking the cache in 7 milliseconds, plus you are querying the data in 35 milliseconds. So it is going to be 42 milliseconds. Okay. So this is how you are going to handle this scenario. For example, if your hit to miss ratio is, for example, you hit 95% of the times, 95% cache hit, and the cache misses are 5%, then if there are 100 requests, what is going to be the average time taken for the request? So it is going to be 95 into 5 plus 5 into 42 upon 100. So your average time for retrieving the data is 6.85 milliseconds, which is very lower than directly accessing the database. So what are the different considerations, or how are you going to handle different scenarios? First of all, since caching, your cache is going to have limited amount of storage, you need to find different ways in which you will handle the request or handling large amount of data from small amount of cache space. So what you're going to do is you're going to explore the TTL, time to live. For example, whenever you are saving any data in the cache, you are going to set its expiry time. Another thing that you are going to consider is eviction. So let's consider these two cases one by one. Whenever you are basically saving any data in the cache, you are basically saying it has a TTL of, let's say, 5 minutes. It has a TTL of 5 minutes. So that item is going to stay in the memory for 5 minutes. And if this, whenever you are setting the data in cache, you are setting its TTL or expiry time to 5 minutes. So it is going to be available for 5 minutes. So any request that comes after, before this expiry time is going to get the data from the cache. And one more thing that we do is whenever we access a cache element, what we will do is, let's say at the third minute it is accessed again. So we will again set its expiry time to 5 minutes. So instead of 3, its TTL is going to be again 5 minutes. So every time this data is accessed, its expiry time is going to be increased. But what is going to happen is, let's say you have limited amount of storage and all the blocks are occupied, all the cache space is occupied. What are you going to do if you want to save more data in this? You will have to remove some element. You will have to remove some data from your cache. This is called eviction, cache eviction. So if you run out of space to save more elements in your cache, what you do is you remove some of the elements from the cache. This is called eviction, and there are different eviction policies. For example, the most frequently talked eviction policy or most recently used eviction policy is least recently used. In this eviction policy, what we do is we find the oldest cache element. For example, if this element was basically accessed 3 hours ago, and all the other elements have been accessed before 3 hours, for example within the last 3 hours, then according to the least recently used policy, what we are going to do is we are going to evict this cache block, and this empty space can be used to store the new key. So this is called eviction, and the TTL is expiry time. So these are the two strategies through which we can get more data. Let's try to consider another scenario that we have to keep in mind when building caching systems. Another scenario to keep in mind is how we are going to handle updates that are done in our database. For example, if there is a key that is stored in our database, or data that is stored in our database, and it is also present here. So how are you going to handle this? So for example, let's say there an update comes. So this is the key that is present, and a red is an update that comes to update this data. Now this data has become red, or its value has been changed. So what we do is the application is going to send data here, and rather than, it can also save the data, but what is generally preferred is it will evict the data, or rather invalidate the data. It is going to invalidate the data. So it is going to invalidate the data. So next time when the request comes to access this data, it is going to check here, the key is not present, K is not present. So it is going to query this data, and it is going to return the response, and asynchronously it is going to be written to the cache. So this is one of the ways in which we can handle updates. So this is an update to the data that is stored in your database. Let's see few more scenarios of things we have to consider when we are writing a cache aside pattern. One other thing that we have to keep in mind is, for example, if there is some data that is very costly to retrieve from the database. For example, if this yellow data is very costly to retrieve from the database, or it is response of a very complex query, then what you can do is you can keep higher TTL for this. We can keep higher TTL for this because it is higher TTL, time to live or expiry. So let's say we can keep this data for 24 hours. If there is no worries about, if there are no worries about data becomes stale, and for other easily accessed data, for example, if blue are the easily accessed data or easily data that can be easily retrieved from the database as they are simple queries or whatever is the case, if that is easily retrievable data from the database, then we can keep lower TTS on this. So here we are seeing that we are not keeping, we are not applying similar expiry settings or expiry configuration to all the keys. We are giving some extra advantage to the important keys in our caching system, in our cache. So this can be handled by the application. So if it comes to know that a particular query is a heavy query, or if its data is expensive to retrieve from the data store, so while saving that data in the cache, you can set higher expiry time for that cache, and for other elements which are easy to retrieve, you can set lower TTS so that those elements can be expired and its place can be taken by the other elements, other new elements which want to be saved in the, which we want to save in the cache. So this is handling different types of data in the caching system. Another thing that we have to keep in mind while designing this caching system is priming. So for example, if you have some database data that is present in the database and you are starting a new cache, one thing is you can just have a read through cache. For example, you're going to check here, if it is present then well and good. If it is not present here, then you are going to get the data from the database, you're going to return the response, and you're then going to save that data in the cache, right? Or you are going to save that in the cache. But another thing that you can do is, during application startup, you can write a small script or whatever, you can write some code that can basically retrieve this data and store it in the database, store it in the cache before application startup. So this is called priming, cache priming. So you are basically getting your cache ready before sending any production traffic to your cache. So there are going to be less cache misses because you have already stored initial data in your cache, and they are going to be hit on this data if it is primed, or this is also called warm up, cache warm up. So if you are doing cache priming, you are basically intentionally storing data at the startup so that whenever you get a call to the cache, it can be retrieved from the cache, and there are high chances of cache hit. But after some time, when you get more and more requests from the database, if all the database has not been stored in the cache, then you will get requests to store more data in the cache. Then it is going to store more data, just like the previous methodologies we have seen, using eviction. If all the data is present, if you want to remove the data, or it can use expiry. For example, if data present in the cache is more than 3 minutes old, then it can be expired by the caching store. So you can use multiple databases for caching. You can use Redis, and there are other also databases, key value stores or database, whatever you want to call, which provide which provide efficient access to key value pairs or your cache elements. So another thing, now we have just seen that we can do cache priming, in which we are intentionally storing the data. If we do not prime the cache, what happens is your read traffic comes, it is going to access the cache, it is not present, it is going to go here, it is going to come to the application and it is going to serve the data. Then your data is stored in the cache. Similarly, another request comes, it checks the cache, it is not present, it goes to the database, it is not present, it retrieves the data and it is returned, and after returning it is stored in the cache. So you can see that after some time your cache is getting ready. So the chances of cache hit are going to increase after some time when most of the elements or majority of the elements have been accessed even one or more than one time. So this is called warm up, cache warm up. In the cache priming stage, what you were doing is you were intentionally storing the data from your database to your cache. In cache warm up, you let your application run for some time on the production traffic so that the cache elements are getting saved in your cache, and after the cache warm up, it can provide higher cache hits, because in the early stages your cache hits are going to be low because database is empty, right? Your data is not present in your cache database, your data is not present in cache, so cache misses are going to be there, and when cache starts to fill up, then it is going to give higher cache hits. So this is called cache warm up. Sometimes cache warm up and cache priming can be considered same, but I personally prefer cache warm up to be from production traffic or from unintentional traffic, and cache priming is from intentional loading up of cache, of your caches. We are seeing that cache is something that is external to a particular system, but that is not the case. Cache is generally storing your data in some higher or efficient storage mechanism so that it can be retrieved more efficiently than your main data store. So you can also have cache in your instance memory or RAM that we had talked about. So this is called local cache, local memory cache. In this case, your application, instead of having an external database cache, external caching store or database, you're having an in-memory cache which is doing everything that you can do with the in-memory RAM, because you are building all the functionalities in your application, right? So this is in-memory cache and it can do all the things, but one of the disadvantages you have with this is if you have multiple application servers, then your in-memory caches are going to be different on your different instances, and it can give you unpredictable traffic latencies, because some elements are going to be cached here and the next request, if it comes here and it is not cached here, then it is going to be cache miss. In this scenario, if you have an external cache like this, it is going to be accessed uniformly by all the instances. It is going to save here and it is also going to access and save here. So it is going to give uniform access or performance across multiple instances. So, but there are some advantages of having this cache, because you don't need to have extra hardware for using in-memory cache. In-memory caches are good when you want to store static data. For example, you want to store some static data, which is not changed frequently. Then you can store that in memory cache because it is not going to change. One disadvantage of having an in-memory cache is that how are you going to handle writes in your application. For example, if you want to write to an external store via cache, how are you going to handle it? If your data store is updated, how are you going to handle its invalidation on all the instances? right? Because you want to handle invalidations, cache invalidation on all the instances. So that is something that you have to implement. So these are there are some advantages and disadvantages of having a cache. But in the cache aside pattern, as we have seen that instead of having a caching store, you use your application logic to have interaction between database and a cache. This pattern may not be helpful if you have a static database, or for example, if you have a static database, you can just prime your database in the cache, and it is static as well as small database, comparatively small database, and has a lot of reads. Then you can just cache this data either in the on your caching store, and it can be used by multiple applications, or you can basically cache this data in your in-memory cache of your instances. If this data is small, then it can be used from in-memory. So this caching aside pattern is helpful only when you have random access of your database elements that you want to speed up. So this is all for the caching aside pattern and the different types of caches that are present. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know your views in the comments. Thank you and have a nice day.